Welcome to the Florandorder Time Chat. Today I'm joined by Sarah Pyke, accountant and founder of Bond Financial and someone who knows the true value of time when it comes to running a business. After being fired for taking a holiday on her birthday, Sarah started Bond Financial to do things differently, to make her clients feel seen, heard, and supported. With 15 years of experience across industries and businesses of all sizes, from family-run setups to companies turning over 100 million, Sarah brings both heart and expertise to the numbers game. She's especially passionate about helping business owners make the most of their time by learning to delegate and focus on what truly matters. Sarah, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Christie. I think that's one of the best intros I've had.
Oh,
appreciate it.
Well, so really this all came about, I wanted to have you on the time chat after something you said in one of our virtual coffees really stuck with me, which was that May is a really full-on time in the accounting world. And you mentioned that while most people think that 30th of June is like the huge big deadline and that's what looms in people's mind, for accountants like yourself, it's more like a line in the sand, from what I understand what you said. And from July, the cycle just starts again. So that really piqued my interest, being interested in time and how it works differently in different industries. So let's kick off with, can you talk us through what the time cycle of an accountant actually looks like? What would people misunderstand about it?
Yeah, and I guess from the get-go, we sort of live in this very different land because we do work on the financial year, which is 1 July to 30 June. And, even that being said, depending on where, companies are based, head office, that sort of thing, they can have completely different year ends as well. So it's straight away, it's something that you always have to get used to, when you first go into the bachelor's degree that we do, just getting used to, well, which year is 25, which year is 26, and that's kind of probably one of the biggest hurdles.
Mm-hmm.
But I quite often get, especially this time of year, people are like, oh, you're coming to 30 June, it must be really busy, it must be a really important time of the year. And actually 30 June, if you think about it, is more like New Year's Eve for us. It's our 31 December, you get to 1 July, and that's New Year's, and we often celebrate that. So often most accounting firms will have quite large parties around the end of financial year just to celebrate the fact that we made it, and we got through to that line in the sand. But essentially is, so 30 June, there's nothing due on 30 June. There's no ATO lodgements, that sort of thing. There might be some administration type things, but 30 June really is a line in the sand, and that it just signifies the end of one financial year and then the start of a new one. May would definitely, I say, would be probably one of the biggest and more important months of the year for an accountant. Although our life revolves around time, we're constantly looking forward to the next deadline, whether that be, a quarterly business activity statement, whether that be a monthly installment activity statement, and everything in between. But May is where everything from the previous year is due. And it's also where we start planning ahead for the next financial year. So May is a really important time for everyone, particularly business owners, to, look at their numbers, get familiar with, how has the current year progressed? And then is there anything we can do to be more efficient before 30 June? Or is there anything that we need to change as we move into the next financial year?
Wow. Okay. So May is your most important month.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so what are your quiet periods then?
So July actually is pretty quiet. So, and although you'll see a lot of people, they want to jump in there straight away, get returns done, the ATO actually gives employers, so most companies that we're all employed by, at least 2 weeks to get everything completed and up to date and actually with the ATO. So technically, if you're doing anything within the first couple of weeks of July, the data is probably not 100% accurate. And so we would generally say towards the end of July to the first week of August is when you would then start to get serious about doing your lodgement and that sort of thing. So you'll do find in July, a lot of accountants will, and there's school holidays around that time as well. A lot of people go away with family, they take a break, and head over to Europe for some sun, and then come back, and then through then from August until basically Melbourne Cup Day. Melbourne Cup Day is the pinnacle where we then hit the silly season and things just start to slow right down.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So what's something that you wish more people knew about that would actually save them time, but they keep avoiding in terms of doing their tax returns?
Yeah, I think, look, a lot of people there's two kinds of people. There's either the people that want to get in and get everything done straight away. They just want to get that ticked off their list. They're getting their return done August, September, October, and just gone, yep, okay, parked it, that's done, fantastic. Then there's the other half that will, delay it to the last possible moment, or at least delay it till after Christmas. But what you do find is once you get to post 31 December, there's a lot of holidays in that first sort of 2 to 3 months of the year. A lot of people don't really come back online seriously until Australia Day. So end of January, you've already lost the whole month. You then have a lot of holidays with Easter and disruption around there. So, and then with everything due in May, it actually ends up being a very short window to get things done. And it ends up causing a lot of stress and frustration just because you're trying to cram a lot into a short amount of time. So if possible, I would always recommend doing things before Christmas rather than after Christmas.
That's a good deadline. A good thing to keep in mind, because as you say, people are trying to rush because of the what we hear about getting things in by 30th of June or early July, and then move that in your mind to before Christmas to get that in. So all the data's there. And I can see just even how you were talking about there, how linking back to what you'd said about university, about how that's when it starts for accountants to start thinking about the year in that way. Let's take it back to what got you into accounting then. What took you to university?
Yeah, I'm the first person in my family to go to university, and the only one still in my immediate family to have done university. But I think it was, I liked the definition of numbers. You sort of have a right number or an answer, or you don't. It's kind of very black and white in that respect. I also love sciences, but knowing that I could be a scientist for decades and never come to a conclusion, kind of, it actually makes me feel a little uneasy. So numbers are, certainly the older I've gotten, I realize I'm a numbers person. I'm a logical brain kind of person. But I did a business course in year 12, actually. So I got to year 12, was not sure at all what I wanted to do. Did a business studies course, absolutely loved it. And I actually remember I specifically loved financial planning, which I obviously didn't go into, but I loved the idea of sort of being able to use that financial literacy for yourself and to set yourself up for the future. And I guess that's one thing that I do, I come across every single day is we don't have enough financial literacy in education. It's only because I've been in university, I then did my post qualification, which was chartered accountancy. But outside of that, most people do not know, about finance, about taxes, not even how to sort of manage a credit card effectively. So it can be really challenging, confusing and frustrating for most people because it's kind of like a foreign language.
That's so true. There is, there's definitely space for it in the education system that we do a lot of these life things, even just like with what I do with organizing time and tasks and everything. It's often just something that people are left to their own devices to pick up or to learn themselves. So yes, let's get it into schooling.
Exactly.
And so you've worked with businesses of all different sizes, but have you noticed any shared, like those financial literacy things that you mentioned, or shared time and money behaviors that the successful ones have, even across all the different sizes?
Yeah, look, when it comes to a business, whilst you have different industries, products, services, and sizes, a business is a business. And certainly from a cash management and cash flow point of view, I would say that's probably the biggest thing that you see. I can still remember dealing with clients that, although they were turning over $20 million, they hadn't conquered their cash flow. Actually making sure that they had enough money in the bank for payroll could sometimes be an issue. They were constantly waiting for clients to pay their invoices so that they, freed up cash flow. And you see that exact same thing happening in businesses that are only turning over $100,000. So it really is a very common theme throughout just business in general. And again, I think that comes back to, sort of financial literacy that we were talking about and just how to manage money. Because what you do often see is these businesses that are struggling with cash flow, you also see individuals and the business owners struggling with their own cash flow. So it's almost a projection of, their personal situations and how they are with money that is then managed the same way throughout their business. And I would probably say the other thing would be delegation. I'm a delegation queen. I love delegating, and if it's something that I know I'm not good at, I would much rather pay someone else to do it for me than have a stab at it, get frustrated over it, make a mistake. I don't like doing things that I don't enjoy, so I delegate them. But again, you see a lot of business owners getting really bogged down in the doing in their business. They've created a business for freedom. They've created a business so they could be a boss and an owner, but they've created themselves another job, essentially. So they're maybe the most underpaid employee of their business, coming from, corporate careers or whatever it might have been. And it's getting them to sort of step back and actually free themselves up and free up their time from the business so that they can then actually put in more, whether it be business development, whether it just be more emotional energy and time into growing the business by getting out of those weeds and actually stepping back from the doing.
And so what are the signs that you see of someone holding on to too much?
It's the late night reconciliations or the late night things. So whether it's invoicing clients at 10 p.m. a night or, actually going into your Xero or accounting software and doing your reconciliations after work hours, after sort of what I would consider 5 o'clock. It's, working on weekends or doing admin things on the weekends because they didn't get the time to catch up during the week, and just constantly chasing your tail. If you're not finding the time, not necessarily for the clients, but for all the other things about running a business, and you're behind on things, then generally that's a pretty good sign that you're obviously doing too much for you, or there's too much currently in that business that needs to be managed by other people and more than just you.
Wow. And so much to think about.
I feel like it, in your world, that probably resonates with, being organized and that sort of thing. There's certainly synergies between what I see occurring in a lot of businesses and what you do with your clients.
Definitely. I really like what you said about the late night reconciliations, how you would be seeing that in the back end of, I assume, Xero and every other program and things like that, and how that's a tip off.
And you see it, you feel it, you hear it in people's voices, you catch up with people and they're like, oh, I'm really tired, or there's not enough time in the day. I'm constantly, you come to see sort of the signs and it's usually written over most people's faces that they're burning the candle at both ends just to essentially keep on top of everything.
And you might hear a variation of this phrase that I hear often, which is it's faster if I just do it myself. Delegation and all. What's your advice to someone who's kind of set in that perspective?
Yeah, I do. I hear that a lot. And look, I must admit, that even resonates with me when I started my career. Certainly as an accountant, you move through the ranks and you move through certain titles and job positions, and there really is a pivotal point where you go from being a doer that all you do is just the client work. You don't have a lot of even sometimes client interaction, and you suddenly go from doing all the work yourself to being the reviewer of all the work. So then you have a team, you start managing those people, and you basically stop doing and then start reviewing And it can be a really super stressful period, because you have to trust other people to do what you did, and it will take longer. It will be done to a different standard, and it can be very uncomfortable, but unfortunately it is something that you need to lean into. You need to appreciate that by doing that, it is going to free you up to do so many other things. And I very much understand how people feel when they get to that point, but you definitely try to make people look outside of that and go, well, if you weren't doing this, what else would you be doing? Or if you weren't doing, the accounts receivable and accounts payable, even though you can, and yes, it might take you 5 minutes, but if you weren't doing those things, you could also be doing, talking to clients, or you could actually be doing further study if that's what you wanted to do, or actually going to breakfast meetings, or playing around a golf with contacts. And so it's trying to show them what they would gain by not doing the stuff that they've just continued to think that, well, it's just better if I do it myself.
Yeah, good answer. So someone, if they're feeling scattered or behind financially, what's the first thing that you do with them to help them focus? Like, what's your first step?
Yeah, look, the first step is to really map everything out. So quite often in those sorts of situations, there will be things that are behind. There'll be ATO lodgements that are overdue. There might be payments and debts that also might be overdue. So it's really mapping out everything that is in their world right now, what is current, what needs to be done right now, what can be sort of left to a later date. And then just trying to clear that field. So clear the slate, so then we can sort of start from a nice fresh position and just clear through that clutter. You find a lot of people do come with a level of stress, anxiety, and sometimes shame. I've dealt with people that are multiple years behind. They might have large ATO debts, and it can be quite embarrassing for them, and I totally understand, how that can be. So it's making them just feel comfortable going, okay, we're going to make a plan for this. We're going to get you back to where you need to be, back to equilibrium, and then we can obviously focus on either growing the business or whatever else the business might need. But we need to get back to a nice clean slate first.
I like that. Yes. Clear the decks and then start again. Yes.
Yeah.
Get rid of the shame. And this is kind of making me think about the financial literacy and the foundations around it. What would be your class, the class that you would teach at school?
Class. I actually did a talk at TAFE a couple of months ago, and that was really fun. They were all towards the end of their diplomas, but the class, it would really be around the basics. It would really be about, okay, this is our tax system. You need to do a tax return every year for the rest of your life, unless you're not working or whatever. It would literally just be spelling out, well, this is kind of the things that you need to do. These are the things that you need to be aware of. How deep you want to go into that is up to you, but just the very basics. So at least they know what is expected of them. Even as small business owners, I'm very fortunate, and being an accountant, running a business is not hard. But for a lot of people that have great ideas, great products or services, the hardest part of actually doing that is then creating this business and trying to run the business. So it's literally being like, okay, if you have a business, you will have, if you're registered for GST, when do you register for GST? If you do, you will have quarterly statements that you need to do. And if you're paying wages, you need to be reporting them in their super. And so it'd be really spelling out just what the bare minimum expectations are of you as a business owner, so that at least people have the right foundations to get them started.
That's so true, because starting out, I just remember every kind of milestone was celebratory, but also like I have to do what now? Like, and adding that onto the one, your knowledge plate, and then two, like your systems and your tasks and everything. So what I'm hearing from you is that better financial literacy and better accounting systems, it actually saves you time day to day, as well as your sanity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, that's the thing, you know, we talked about time at the very start, and running a business is all about time and deadlines and that sort of thing. So it's about making things as streamlined as you possibly can. And look, with that comes a level of sort of financial commitment as to whether you have all these things to make your life easier, or, you know, whether you just go with the bare minimum. But it's at least being aware of what's available or what you could be using, as opposed to being completely in the dark and not knowing who to turn to either.
Definitely. Yeah. So what kind of tools or habits would you suggest that someone takes on? Like, what would make the biggest difference?
Yeah, look, I certainly think it's a little bit hard for me, because I'm a very structured person. So I love to plan. I use my calendar as my world. Everything is in there. You know, I blanket out time if I need to. I put every scheduled meeting, appointment, whether it's at the doctor or the dentist, everything is in my calendar. So I know how my time is being spent and where it's being spent and what I need to remember. Even if I have a conversation with someone and I know I need to follow up with them in 3 months' time, it goes straight in the calendar. So for me, I'm very big on routine in a way, but also organization and planning, and just getting it down. So even if you just want to brain dump it, get it down into your calendar and then forget about it until that 3 months comes around. I get my little notification and go, oh yeah, I've got to reach out to Christie and have that conversation. So it's sort of using, even just basic tools at your disposal to just helped to prompt you to help, remind me of things that I need to do without having to create, elaborate spreadsheets or whatever else. I might be an accountant, but I don't necessarily love a spreadsheet. So there you go.
Hearing you talk about your calendar, it's like hearing me talk. Yes, we're very alike in that way.
Yeah, I love my calendar.
And so if there was one finance related habit that you wish every business owner would adopt to make life easier long term, what would it be? Is there one thing?
Oh, that's a good question.
What would make your life easier, your role easier?
I think it's look, I think there may be sort of a couple of parts to that, but it's being willing to, I guess, hear others' opinions, and being open to change. You do see a lot of people who they keep doing something the same way because that's just the way it's always been done. That's the way they feel it should always be done. So, you can only, it's like the saying goes, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So, if people don't want to be helped, then there's not that much that anyone can do, whether it's an accountant or someone else. So it's about being open to growth and to help and to assistance, and also putting a hand up when you do need that help. A lot of people try and do it all for far too long, and then they come looking for help, but it's either going to be a real struggle to either undo everything or fix everything, or it might just be too late. So that, just sort of being open to and wanting to accept help, and growth, like a growth mindset. And I guess the other thing would sort of be also we don't need to keep up with the Joneses, that mentality of, well, the more I earn, the more I must spend, or, the bigger my neighbor's house is, the bigger my house needs to be, it's one of the things I find we seem to live for other people and their expectations of us. And so we spend our money based on that, as opposed to being like, well, if I want to drive a Toyota Corolla, I'm going to drive a Toyota Corolla. I don't care whether my neighbors both have a Porsche or a Land Rover. But you often see people, spending money, even within businesses, either for lavish trips or lavish cars. And one, it could be completely outside their means. Or two, there's actually not an emotional attachment there. There's not necessarily a reason behind it other than trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, that really reminds me about the four types of wealth, like money, time, health, and impact, and how it is kind of that finding your balance between those four, and keeping up with the Joneses is just all about that appearance, or about I was having a discussion with someone. It was very much about them making this amount of money, but then because they were making that amount of money, they had no time to actually use the money. And so it's all a trade-off, and it's thinking about, well, what's right for you? What's your
Absolutely. And you do, see that, and it's kind of, even I get the question with my business, like, oh, where do you want to take it? How big do you want to be? And yes, very much on a growth directory, but at the same time, I don't want to sacrifice, my work-life balance. I don't want to grow just for the sake of growing. I want to grow, but also be able to enjoy, what I'm creating, enjoy my clients, be able to show up as myself and not show up as a frazzled, rattled, shell of my former self.
Yeah. And I said in the introduction that you'd had quite a rough start to the beginning of your business. So you've kind of been on, both sides of, I suppose, burnout and not being in a very nice place to begin with, and now being more stable and enjoying your career. So from being fired to starting your own business, what did that teach you about how you spend your time and the value of life and time and all of that we just talked about?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I do feel like almost the period of getting fired, then starting the business, it was almost like a bit of a rebirth for me. It was the most amazing. 2022 was a really unique year, in that it started off pretty poorly at the start, and this happened midway through, but it started pretty poorly at the start. But by the end of the year, it was literally my favorite year. By the end of 2022, I was like, this year has been so like polar opposites, but so overwhelmingly amazing and surprising, and I came out of that year just absolutely certain that where I was heading was where exactly I needed to be. And I think it was, it might have been partly that, but I think it was also COVID. Coming out the back of COVID, it just made you appreciate time. I'd worked in corporate for 15 years at that point. I've been in accounting for 20, but I just came out of the back of that and went, I don't need to be on that hamster wheel 24/7. And I've always loved travel, and I've always traveled at least once a year for almost the last 15 years. But now that is, it really is a part of who I am, and almost my sort of, brand personality is such. Most of my clients know that I'm constantly traveling. Most people in my circles know that I'm constantly somewhere in the world. And I just realized that life's too short. We only have this one time to make the most of. So I am definitely trying to keep that balance well and truly in the middle.
Yeah. Have you explored like the digital nomad kind of way of working, traveling?
Yes, I think I'm up to about 8 countries now where I've worked remotely. For varying lengths of time and different sort of intensity levels. And look, some places are really great with the time difference, some not so much. Europe actually isn't too bad, depending on who you're calling, but it actually allows you to, if you're a morning person, you get up, you can do phone calls, speak to people in Australia, they sleep, you go and enjoy your day, and then come back online, sort of towards late afternoon, early evening, and reconnect. So, I'm fortunate because I just need literally my laptop and a strong internet connection, which once you're out of Australia, everyone has strong internet connections. So it's really not a problem. Australia is just terrible in that regard. But I would recommend everyone just to try it at least once. Obviously, product-based businesses, that's a little hard, but it's saying that that's where you need to, you delegate, you get away from the business. And yes, you'll still have an eye over it. You'll still be hovering and be across everything, but actually having other people help you to do the groundwork so that you can do things like that and work remotely, even if it's just for a week or two.
Nice tie back. I like that. Very good. Yes, the power of delegating and its gifts. Very good.
Absolutely.
And is there anywhere you've got in the plans already?
Not at the moment. I've got a few domestic trips coming up towards the end of the year. I just got back from South Korea, so that was amazing over Easter. And there will be some at the end of the year, but I just haven't tied down the location yet. So it could be Morocco, it could be Sri Lanka, yet to decide.
Amazing, amazing. And to close us out, what's one myth about accountants or money management, your choice, that you'd love to bust?
Look, one thing that really gets me going is like, accountants are boring. When people say that, and I had a guy allude to it not that long ago, I would say even about a month ago. And honestly, like in the corporates that I've worked in, I've never met people who can party harder. Like you get to end of financial year, it's the 30th of June, and literally like they're all on the dance floor, like heavily inebriated. So I would test anyone to come to one of those events and say accountants are boring. Because I've met a lot of amazing people throughout my career, and I think most of us do what we do because we actually care about the people. Some maybe more than others, but we care about the people, their businesses, what they're doing. And like I said, my business, we're very much in the customer service business. I'm an accountant, but we deal with people day in, day out who need us for whatever reason. And sometimes it's just to be on the other end of the phone. Sometimes it's to be an accountability buddy to kind of keep them moving forward and make sure they're doing what they said they were going to do a month ago. And sometimes it's, counseling them through, even a separation or family breakdowns and that sort of thing. So it really is, a lot of us do what we do because, we really like helping people and solving their problems.
Oh, okay. So let's reframe it. Caring party animals. Love it. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
You're welcome. Thank you, Christie. I had an absolute blast. It was lovely.
Thank you.